Hi, everybody. Welcome back to White Knowledge is Power, Understanding Racism in America and Why White People Should Know Black History. Today, I want to break down what critical race theory truly is, why it's being attacked, and what it means for the future of this nation. Critical race theory may have only recently become something that we've seen in mainstream media, but it is a concept that was developed in the 1970s and 80s after the Civil Rights Movement. Its intent is as an academic and legal framework that indicates that systemic racism is part of American society everywhere, from education and housing to employment and healthcare. To understand this definition, we must also understand what systemic racism is. According to a research article from healthaffairs.org, systemic racism is a form of racism that is pervasively and deeply embedded in systems, laws, written or unwritten policies, and entrenched practices and beliefs that produce, condone, and perpetuate widespread unfair treatment and oppression of people of color. So now that we understand what systemic racism is, we can move forward with clarity about what critical race theory truly is. What CRT offers is a way to take a careful and judicious look at our nation's laws, policies, and institutions, and how racism is still woven into the fabric of their very existence. CRT is made up of several major tenets or beliefs. Those are: 1, race is socially constructed. 2, racism is normalized. 3, interest convergence. 4, differential racialization. 5, intersectionality. And 6, voice of color thesis. What does all that mean? Let's break it down. Okay, so the first one, race is socially constructed. This means that racial categories are not something that is permanent, scientific, objective, logical, consistent, or able to stand up to scrutiny. What does exist is racism from the made-up categories we've all been assigned. German scientist Johann Friedrich Blumenbach is credited with one of the first race-based classifications back in 1776. He made up 5 categories: Caucasian, which was the white race; Mongolian, the yellow race; Malayan, the brown race; Ethiopian, the black race; and American, the red race. What this allowed was, if whites were in their own category, then they could be set apart as superior. From there, they could justify slavery because the other groups were different and inferior. In addition, racial definitions in America have changed over time. It's not a constant. For example, people of Mexican birth were labeled white until 1930. Japanese people were also labeled as white until 1933. The definition of being black would also change from state to state, whether you were 1/4, 1/16, or if you had 1 drop of African ancestry in your blood. As you can see, the concept of race is all over the place in this country. All of this to say that racism is still something that impacts the lives of non-whites through education, employment, the justice system, and other laws, public policies, and interpersonal interactions. And this belief does not negate the importance of ancestry and heritage. It just shows that race is something that has been devised to categorize people to benefit those in power. Number 2, racism is normalized. We see this displayed in various microaggressions. Racial microaggressions are the everyday slights, indignities, put-downs, and insults that minority groups experience in day-to-day interactions. They can be dismissive looks, gestures, and tones, to saying things like, "You speak really good English," when talking to a person of Asian descent. This creates the assumption that they don't think that that person is truly American. Or saying, "You're really pretty for a dark-skinned Black girl." You called her pretty, but qualified the statement with "for a dark-skinned Black girl." These comments may even come across as compliments on the outside, but there's an underlying microaggression there. Other examples of racial microaggressions include a woman clutching her purse tighter to her side if she's passing a Black man, or when the term "all lives matter" came about after the Black Lives Matter was created. So those are a few examples of how racism has been normalized. The third tenet Interest convergence is the belief that when there are advances in law, it's only because of mutual interest for those in power. An example of this is the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. The US decided to implement desegregation to improve their public image after receiving international criticism of our racial politics and after Black veterans were angry about fighting for a country that doesn't seem equal. It was in the best interest of our image to desegregate. It wasn't implemented because it was morally right. Number 4, differential racialization is the belief that a dominant society racializes minority groups at different times in response to shifting needs. Examples of this include stereotypes in pop culture, i.e. the fact that Black people were depicted as simple-minded, childlike servants who were content in their subordination to whites. Another example is that after the Civil Rights Movement, Black people, especially Black men, came to be viewed as natural-born criminals, prone to violence, or as lazy leeches living off social welfare programs paid for by hardworking white people. When it suited white people, we stereotyped Black people to benefit what we needed at that time. Number 5, intersectionality. This is the belief that CRT doesn't limit itself to race exclusively, but that no person is a single, simplistic, unitary identity. We all have different backgrounds, characteristics, and identities that overlap. An example of this is an African American can also be Muslim and homosexual. They're all three true, not just that they're African American, they intersect. And the last tenet is voice of color thesis. And this is the idea that people of color are uniquely qualified to speak on behalf of other members of their group regarding the forms and effects of racism. They provide essential insight into the nature of the legal system. After hearing how complex critical race theory is and how it's used as a tool to analyze our policies and systems in this country, do you still think that they're teaching that to your children? Are you kidding me? Most adults don't understand CRT. So why is it such a hot button issue? It's because the meaning of CRT has been twisted and taken over to fit the narrative of the far right. It's been co-opted as a catch-all phrase to silence any discussion about systemic racism, ban truthful teaching of American history, and reverse any progress towards racial justice. The right have made it so that any mention of diversity or inclusion is CRT, even if it has nothing to do with what CRT actually is or stands for. Those who say that banning CRT is because they want a balanced education are kidding themselves. Okay, what they're doing is allowing the truth of our nation's history to be denied, silence anyone who disagrees with the white way, and punish those who do speak out against racism and whitewashed history and practices. This nation is hog-tying our education system. To tell a teacher that they are no longer allowed to teach without giving deference to any one perspective and also provide an opposing narrative review of what's being taught is insane. That means that when they teach something like the Holocaust, they can't say that was implicitly wrong. They have to provide a counter argument or not come right out and say that was a terrible thing that happened and discuss how it happened and how we can prevent it from ever happening again. They've also been told that they can't discuss systemic racism or sexism that would discriminate, hurt feelings, or make someone feel guilty about their skin color. Like many people have seen, what this kind of ban leads to is the fact that, for example, the subject of Rosa Parks in one book, bowing down to the restrictions put on them by Florida lawmakers, they removed any language of why she didn't give up her seat. Without context, it loses all meaning. She becomes a woman on a bus who didn't want to get up instead of a protest against white supremacy because she refused to give up the seat to a white person and she was Black. How dare they rewrite history like that? How dare they rewrite history like that? What it comes down to is that by banning diversity and inclusion, and by banning this new incorrect definition of CRT, what they're doing is denying minorities the dignity of their own lived experiences and that what they've been through doesn't matter. That their voices don't count as much as white voices. They're also denying all of us and our children the right to a truthful education. We all deserve to know the truth so we can live our lives and make our decisions with all the facts at hand. I hope that this helped you understand what critical race theory really is and how it has been twisted into something that it's not. Thank you for listening. Let's continue to educate ourselves. Please share, like, subscribe for more videos. We got to keep fighting. We cannot let those who want to erase the truth win. We have to stand up for what's right. And so that being said, I'm going to leave you with my phrase that I leave with every time. Let's end racism together.